And then they proceeded into exogenous testosterone without any real adverse effects, because now they already have a little bit of experience. Welcome to Vigorous PEDs yet again. I'm Coach Steve. Let's discuss an HCG protocol for you to assess your testicular potential in testosterone production before you decide to get your hands dirty with exogenous performance-enhancing drugs, namely being testosterone. Most guys would consider testosterone first in the wide selections of PEDs and AAS that we can choose from. When they decide to go on cycle, start with testosterone and then consider a couple other anabolics sprinkled on top. Now, before you decide to do that, and I understand that the large majority of my audience is already enhanced, but for the guys that are natty out there and are thinking about their first cycle and haven't watched this video yet, where I didn't mention this protocol because I usually reserve that for natty clients, consider using HCG before you decide to add the exogenous testosterone in to see what your potential testosterone production could be without going on exogenous testosterone first. Of course, that's going to raise your serum concentrations tremendously, probably over the reference range. But let's say you're in the middle of the reference range or the bottom of the reference range. Let's see if HCG is able to raise your natural testosterone production a little bit, or marginally, or to the top of the reference range, and see how you feel before you decide to get your hands dirty. Now, this is a protocol that I've used with many of my drug-free athletes when they come to me for coaching regarding their first cycle. And in most cases, I tell them, hey, listen, let's see what your drug-free potential is going to be. Maybe we can add another 4, 5, maybe even 10 kilos of muscle before you actually require anabolic androgenic steroids to push you to the next level, because you've reached the first step in the rate of development being your natural testosterone production. Let's say that testosterone is the middle of the reference range or a little bit lower. I might recommend HCG progressively building that dose up to see at which dose they feel best and what their corresponding total testosterone, free testosterone, serum estradiol concentrations might be after incorporating HCG treatment. Now, I honestly wish I had this protocol laying around before I started performance-enhancing drugs at the age of 26. My serum total testosterone levels were about 650 nanograms per deciliter. And I think with, a low dose HCG protocol, maybe building that up to, a couple hundred IUs per day over the course of several weeks, I will be able to run, raise my total testosterone concentrations maybe to 800 nanograms per deciliter, and then get a little bit of an indication of how exogenous testosterone at a moderate dose would exactly feel. Because you got to keep in mind that not everybody responds well to supraphysiological dosages of exogenous testosterone. Some people get anxiety. Some people don't feel good. Their sex drive goes down. So the first and safest step before you decided to go on hormone replacement or decide to start your first cycle, why don't you try HCG to see what your testosterone potential could be? See if HCG is even going to be effective, which decides the right going forward. If HCG is effective, you can almost guarantee that your post-cycle therapy is going to be effective in the future. And if you don't respond well to HCG treatment, PCT might not be in the cards for you. You might be considering a lifetime commitment, because if you can't use HCG to bring your testosterone levels up a little bit after being on exogenous hormones for, a couple months, maybe even years on end, it's probably safe to say that HCG is not going to help you recover at that point, and you need to look at, more expensive compounds like human menopausal gonadotropin or kisspeptin 10 or guanorelin or triptorelin, etc. Or again, maybe it's a lifetime commitment of hormone replacement. So keep that in mind. Personally, I wish I would have done this at the beginning. Before I started exogenous testosterone at my first cycle, it was only 250 milligrams per week. But hey, I think I could have raised my total testosterone concentrations with a little bit of HCG prior and see where my total testosterone would end up at. I would assume 800 nanograms per deciliter, a small bump. But again, some of you guys out there, I know you have 250, maybe 400, maybe 500 nanograms per deciliter. And when I recommend a low dose of HCG progressively being built up, Some people reach a sweet spot of 250 IUs 3 times per week. Some guys need 500 IUs every day, and some guys even need 1,000 IUs per day before they see a significant increase in total testosterone concentrations. And keep in mind that, 1,000 IUs HCG per day alongside 75 IUs of human menopausal gonadotropin, HMG, is a typical fertility protocol for the guys that are androgen deficient. So that actually stimulates testosterone production and spermatogenesis in the testicles. And those are pretty hefty dosages, considering they're being run for 12 months to 18 months at a time, at which point, in most cases, testosterone production goes up and fertility and spermatogenesis goes up as well, allowing them to conceive. So when you're not using exogenous testosterone, HCG treatment alongside HMG treatment can be pretty prolonged and pretty high dosages. But I would not consider high dosages of HCG when you're on cycle, because you're sending two different kinds of, a positive production of testosterone and spermatogenesis in the testicles, and then high dosages of or high concentrations of androgens in the bloodstream is going to downregulate that process through downregulations of the hypothalamic pituitary testes axis. So this is just purely a protocol that you can incorporate before you decide to take performance-enhancing drugs, to take your bodybuilding or fitness aspirations to the next level. So what I do with my clients that are, middle to the bottom of the reference range, we start low, 100 IUs of HCG 3 times per week, and every week we increase the dose to a point where they feel good. Now, some guys already feel good on 100 IUs of HCG. You do your blood work before and after. Let's say they went from 300 nanograms per deciliter to 450, maybe 500. Really, the results are all over the place. Some guys need multiple increments before their testosterone goes up, and some guys only need a very low dose just to stimulate a little bit of production besides their middle of the reference range luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, which again, we do blood work before, during, and after. So maybe 100 IUs 3 times per week. If that doesn't work, you don't feel noticeable improvements after a week. And most guys should feel noticeable improvements after 1 week on HCG, because it, promotes a favorable total testosterone, estradiol, DHEA, and pregnenolone concentrations in the body and everything that's metabolically in between. So you don't get good results in 100 IUs 3 times per week. Feel free to increase to 250 IUs 3 times per week the following week after. See how you feel. Libido goes up, well-being goes up, anabolism goes up. You feel a little bit better performance in the gym. Do your blood work, see where your total testosterone is at. If you don't notice a marginal or noticeable increase, go to 500 IUs 3 times per week. Then maybe 1,000 IUs 3 times per week. So every time you basically double the dose. And then maybe 1,000 units every day. Now, at 1,000 units every day, there should be a significant increase in total testosterone levels, and you should feel noticeably better. Keep in mind that as you're boosting your total testosterone concentrations, so will serum estradiol concentrations increase. And it highly depends on your body fat levels. If you, where aromatization occurs, most of the aromatization of testosterone into estradiol occurs in the body fat. So let's say you have reasonably low body fat, below 10%, it might not be an issue for you. But again, keep track of your estradiol concentrations, because they might still increase as HCG is able to produce estradiol in the testicles directly. So you might need to promote estradiol excretion or metabolization from estradiol into esterone or estriol with the use of a supplement like diethylmethane. You can promote excretion with a supplement like calcium D-glucarate. But some guys might actually need an aromatase inhibitor as the form of aromasin. And when I say aromasin, it's an extremely low, moderate dose of 6.25 milligrams, maybe 2 times per week, Monday, Friday, for example. And that only occurs when total testosterone starts to reach over 800 to maybe even 1,000 nanograms per deciliter. Again, considering that they have the potential to produce that much testosterone, given that most guys nowadays are like middle of the reference range, or when they're at the top of the reference range, I wouldn't even recommend this protocol, because their, total testosterone is already good. And we don't need to assess the potential of the testicles and how much they could produce further. In that case, we would just go, proceed into a cycle of 250 tests and then start experimenting with other compounds once we assess their tolerance to testosterone and their estradiol conversion and potential of estradiol conversion in the body fat. So again, it's a little bit difficult to predict how the conversion and the aromatization of testosterone into estradiol will occur, because that highly depends on your body fat levels and your potential for aromatization. And you can easily deduct that from your serum total testosterone concentrations and your serum estradiol concentrations. Medium test and reasonably high estrogen, there's some potential for aromatization. If you got medium total testosterone and low estradiol, which I've seen many times, then you don't have so much potential for aromatization, and that determines the methods you need to incorporate going forward. Maybe dinyl-methane is sufficient. Maybe dinyl-methane and calcium diglucarate is sufficient. Or maybe you need a true aromatase inhibitor like aromacin, for example. And again, lowest effective dose, because you don't want to crush your estrogen even below the middle of the reference range when you're drug-free, because estrogen and libido go hand in hand. Now, this is a suitable approach for the guys that are still drug-free. Depending on how you respond to HCG, you might consider exogenous testosterone or not consider exogenous testosterone. Again, I've heard from guys that they get anxiety on HCG. They don't feel good. They feel a little bit of blood pressure increases. Maybe their hematocrit even goes up simply by raising their total testosterone concentration. So please, blood work before, during, and after, guys. It's really, really, really important. And no, I don't have stock in LabCorp or Quest or Let's Get Checked or etc. I just feel it's important because, going by feel alone, considering most of the guys don't have so much experience with exogenous compounds or performance-enhancing drugs in general, that's not really the correct way going forward. Oh, I feel high estrogen levels. Well, like I mentioned in that other video, you can watch that here. Maybe it's not the estradiol at all. Maybe it's something else. Again, if you don't have so much experience yet and you're not signed up with a coach who has the experience and has the ability to guide you through this process, just do your blood work and make decisions on that. Now, the good thing about HCG is, considering it doesn't, dramatically increase your serum estradiol concentrations, which has a negative effect on your hypothalamic pituitary testis axis as well. So considering you kept your estradiol under control, HCG doesn't really downregulate the HPTA. So if the HCG treatment is not for you, and you don't see a noticeable effect in total testosterone, or you don't notice an adverse effect, and you'd like to proceed into exogenous testosterone and other anabolic steroids, you don't need to do a post-psychotherapy. You simply let your total testosterone levels decline, because HCG doesn't have a negative feedback on serum LH and FSH concentrations. Now, if your LH and FSH concentrations were already low, HCG might be able to boost your total testosterone production, making you feel, for my clients, honestly, most of the guys, let's say 99% responded pretty well. So I don't see any issues in the future, but there are guys out there that don't respond well to this treatment. So keep that in mind in case you're one of those, unlucky fews that doesn't do well with HCG. But for the guys that I've helped, from natty from drug-free, and I shouldn't say natty, right? From the drug-free status into the enhanced status, and for the guys that were willing to experiment with HCG to see where their testosterone potential could be after a couple of weeks of HCG treatment, most of those guys, or the large majority of those guys, responded very well. They noticed an increase in libido, an increase in sex drive, increase in strength, maybe a little bit more favorable fat loss if they were also doing that in a cutting phase. And then they proceeded into exogenous testosterone without any real adverse effects, because now they already have a little bit of experience. You already put them in the driver's seat, even though I was there, in the passenger seat to guide them through this process. So now they basically promote themselves with a little bit of higher total testosterone levels that they never had in the past into exogenous testosterone, and they know what to expect from exogenous testosterone besides the obvious post-injection pain that happens when you start injecting exogenous compounds into muscle. Because, of course, HCG goes the subcutaneous route, and most of the pharmaceutical grade HCGs are a little bit painful, like Pregnyl or some of the other HCG brands. They do cause a little bit of post-injection pain. It actually burns when you inject it, but it's not even close to the first few injections of exogenous testosterone, whether you use farm grade or not. I started my first cycle with farm grade, and every 0.5 milliliter injection that I administered was honestly not too pleasant, but after 4, 5, 6 administrations in the same spot, your muscle usually adapts and no longer gives you that unpleasant post-injection pain and tight and bundled up feeling after each administration. Keep in mind, we weren't as knowledgeable, 10 years ago. And I went with those 21 gauge times 1.5 inch needles. Nowadays I use 25 gauge, which is a lot more or a lot less invasive. So that's pretty much the protocol. Let me summarize it for you. 100 IUs HCG 3 times per week, let's say Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Give that a week to assess your tolerance to HCG and see if you notice any improvement in well-being, sex drive, and strength in the gym. If you do not, you bump up the dose to 250 IUs HCG 3 times per week. Same thing applies. Go by sex drive, go by strength, go by well-being. Noticeable effect, you keep it there, you check your total testosterone levels to compare. And if you don't notice an improvement, you double the dose again. 500 IUs HCG, then 1,000 IUs HCG 3 times per week. And lastly, 1,000 IUs HCG every day. And if you don't notice an effect by then, hormone replacement therapy is definitely in the cards for you, and it will be a lifetime commitment. Just keep that in mind. I really hope that helps, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're looking for the most comprehensive guides to bodybuilding pharmacology, you can find those ebooks on my website, vigoroussteve.com/shop. If you're looking for personalized advice, you can find the rates to my services there as well in the services section. Follow me on Instagram at VigorousSteve. See you guys in the next video. Oh, before I forget, Vigorous crew, much appreciated. See you guys.